Hi, my name is Connor. I'm a design engineer here at Fox, and today I'm going to be going over the installation of the Grip ST adjustable fork cartridge kit. When you purchase the Grip ST kit, it will come with 2 cartridges, one for compression and one for rebound. It comes with springs and preload spacers that are both for your specific application. And it also comes with the tools that are necessary to install: a cartridge bleed tool, a cartridge shaft holding tool, the necessary wrench to adjust your preload, as well as 2 quarts of oil. To do this install at home, you'll just need common hand tools, and there's a couple specialty tools that will make it easier, such as a 45mm wrench, an air gap tool, and a fork vise. If you don't have a fork vise, a standard bench vise will do. All right, the first step is remove both your fork legs from the bike. We'll then take the fork leg and we'll chuck it up in our fork vise, and we'll remove the top cap. When you go to remove the top cap, it's easiest to break it loose here and then take it off on the ground. It's under a lot of spring compression, and so it's going to want to shoot up at you. If you don't have a vise, you can take the top cap in the triple clamp, and once you break it loose, slide the fork out of the leg and then bring it back over to your workspace. So I'm going to remove the top cap now. Okay, now that we got the top cap loosened, I'm going to put it on the ground, and I'm going to finish taking the top cap off. Keep in mind there's a lot of spring force on this, so it's going to want to shoot up at you. Okay. All right, now that I got the top cap loosened up, I'm going to remove all the stock internal components. So there's going to be a top cap, there's going to be the preload spacer, and then there's a spring in here. So when I drain the oil, the spring is going to come out with it. And then what you're want to do is you're going to want to get all the remaining oil out of the fork tube. So hang it upside down and just cycle it a couple times until no more oil comes out. Now that we have the oil drained, we're going to remove the stock damper rod that's in here. So I'm going to put it back in the fork vise. I'm going to clamp on the lower tube, and then we'll use our 12mm Allen to get this bolt out. This bolt's in pretty tight. So what you can do is you can put the spring and your preload spacer back in to apply some downward force. Now that the screw is out, I'm going to remove the stock damper, flip the fork upside down again. You'll see that there's a stock damper rod and there's a top out spring. This spring is going to be reused depending on your application. Refer to the table in the manual for whether you're going to reuse that. And then we'll set the fork leg to the side. Now that I've finished removing all the stock internals, we're going to prep the new cartridge kit. Do keep on hand the stock top out spring, depending on your application. Look at the manual and the table in there, and the stock lower bolt. This kit has a compression leg and a rebound leg. Look at the top cap, and on there it'll say compression or rebound. The compression leg is going to go into the clutch side of the bike, the left-hand side, and the rebound leg is going to go into the right side of the bike, the throttle side. So this leg here that we're working on is the clutch side. So I have the compression leg here, and what we're going to do is we're going to remove the top cap. We'll set the top cap to the side for now. The cinch nut on the cartridge, we're going to run that down until it's bottomed out. Doesn't need to be tight, just do it finger tight. Before I install this back in the vise, there is a bottom out cup in here, so you're going to want to make sure that is in the proper orientation. During disassembly, it could potentially come dislodged. So what you're going to do is you're going to look through the tube, and if you can see all the way to the bottom, then you're good to go. If you can't, you can put a screwdriver through here and shake it around until you're able to see all the way through. This one's good, so I'm going to put it in the vise now. I'm going to take the cartridge that we've already removed the top cap on. We're going to take the top out spring. In this application, we do reuse the stock top out spring. Refer to the manual and the table listing if you reuse the top out spring or not. And we're going to slide that into the fork leg. You do kind of want to wiggle it around and shake it until you feel it go all the way to the very end. We'll then reuse that lower bolt and we'll torque that one up. Torquing this lower bolt referred to the manufacturer's torque spec. When you torque this lower bolt, sometimes it's helpful to use the spring to apply some downward pressure to hold the bolt in there. When torquing up this lower bolt, do refer to the manufacturer's workshop manual for the torque spec. Now I'll put the fork in an upright position and we'll bleed the cartridge. Now we're going to bleed the cartridge. So grab your cartridge bleeding tool, and this is going to come in the kit. Thread it onto the end of the shaft. Just a couple of turns. And then grab one of the bottles of oil, and we're going to pour in 500 cc's of oil. We'll start to bleed the fork by cycling the outer tube. So just grab this tube and move it 5 times. And now we'll cycle the cartridge about 10 times. And as you bleed it, you should start to feel some resistance. Now that the cartridge and the fork are bled, we're going to set the air gap, which is the height from the top of the tube to where the oil is. So this is where the air gap tool is going to be useful. If you don't have an air gap tool, you can use a ruler and set it to the right height, which is going to be listed in the manual. So take some oil. We'll pour some additional oil in. You do want to make sure that the cartridge and the tubes are at their lowest position. So we'll take our air gap tool, set to the appropriate height, and then we'll remove the additional oil. Our air gap is now set, so we're going to install the springs. So we'll get the spring that's supplied in the kit. We'll get the spring retainer and the appropriate preload spacer. We'll first install the spring. Just slip that over the shaft and drop it in. Then we'll put the retaining ring in. This is directional and it has a groove that shows you which direction faces up. Then we'll finish by installing the preload spacer. At this point, it can be helpful to move to a vise that is lower in height because we're going to be compressing these springs, which again have a lot of force. Now that we have it in a lower vise, we're going to finish the installation by putting the top cap back on. You'll grab the appropriate top cap for the fork leg. We're working on the compression side here. Grab the supplied cartridge shaft holding tool, a 14 millimeter wrench, and a 15 millimeter wrench. Okay, at this point, we're going to pull up on the cartridge. We're going to get our cartridge hold tool, and we're going to compress the springs. Now that the cartridge shaft holding tool is slipped underneath the nut, we can remove the bleed tool. Then we can take the top cap and thread that on. Thread it all the way until it bottoms. You should see that there is a gap between the cinch nut and the top cap. Using a 15 millimeter wrench and a 14 millimeter wrench, we'll now tighten up the cinch nut against the top cap. This joint gets torqued to 15 foot-pounds, so we'll use a torque wrench with the crow's foot. We'll start by removing the other wrench and installing our crow's foot. Now that the joint is torqued, we can remove the cartridge shaft holding tool. Apply some downward pressure, and this will want to pop up at you, so be careful. Then you want to make sure that the preload spacer is sitting flat against the top cap itself. Now that this process is done, I'm going to bring the fork back into the fork vise. And using a 45mm wrench, I'm going to tighten the top cap assembly to the fork tubes. Refer to your workshop manual on the tightening torque for this joint. Now we've successfully completed the installation of the Grip ST cartridge kit into your fork leg. Now I'm going to set the preload, which is going to depend on your rider weight. I'm 185 pounds with gear, so I'm going to set it to 12 clicks. Repeat these steps for the other fork leg. In this case, it would be the rebound leg on the throttle side. Once you have that completed, you'll be ready to go and install it onto the bike. Thank you for watching. You can find this kit as well as other suspension components on ridefox.com.